War. It's a word that instantly conjures images of chaos, destruction, and unimaginable human suffering. But behind every battle, every air raid, every soldier's march, there's something else. Something that fuels and bleeds a nation in equal measure. Money, mountains of it. Fortunes spent, economies transformed, and entire national treasuries emptied in pursuit of victory or survival. But no war in human history has cost more, financially, materially, and economically, than World War II, spanning 6 grueling years from 1939 to 1945, involving more than 100 million people from over 30 countries. World War II wasn't just a clash of ideologies or a test of military might. It was also the single most expensive conflict the world has ever seen, with costs that are still being paid in many ways today. Estimates vary, but the total global cost of World War II is often placed between $4 and $6 trillion in today's dollars. That's not just an astronomical figure. It's a number so large that it reshaped global economies, led to the rise and fall of empires, and altered the world order permanently. But how exactly did it get so expensive? In this video, we'll explore 5 key reasons why World War II stands as the most financially devastating conflict in recorded history. Each reason is a piece of the puzzle that helps explain how a single war could consume entire nations' wealth and reshape the global economy for generations. So let's dive in. Reason 1. Total war and global scale. World War II was not a regional skirmish or a clash between two rival states. It was a truly global conflict. The war involved major theaters across Europe, Africa, the Pacific, and Asia, with nearly every major industrial power on Earth playing a role. This vast scale meant that costs were multiplied exponentially. Unlike previous wars that were largely confined to specific regions, World War II saw battles being fought on land, sea, and air across multiple continents simultaneously. The concept of total war meant that entire societies were mobilized, not just professional armies. Civilians became part of the war effort, whether working in munitions factories, rationing food, or even participating directly in conflict zones. Economies were redirected almost entirely toward war production. Governments took control of industries, repurposed consumer manufacturing into military production, and diverted resources like steel, rubber, and oil into the machinery of war. When the entire globe is engaged in conflict, costs don't just add up, they explode. Reason 2. Massive military spending and arms production. World War II saw unprecedented levels of military spending. The United States alone spent over $341 billion on the war effort at the time, which equates to more than $5 trillion today. The Soviet Union, Germany, Britain, Japan, and others also poured massive portions of their GDP into weapons, ships, tanks, and aircraft. The arms race that defined the war led to technological breakthroughs, but at a staggering cost. Factories worked around the clock, producing everything from rifles to battleships. The sheer volume of production was staggering. The United States, for example, produced over 300,000 aircraft, 100,000 tanks, and more than 8,000 warships during the course of the war. But every bullet, every boot, every bomber had a price tag. And let's not forget the final years of the war, where weapons of mass destruction entered the equation. The development of the atomic bomb through the Manhattan Project alone cost around $2 billion at the time, which would be over $30 billion today, all for just 3 bombs. It was a new era of warfare, and with it came an astronomical new era of expenses. Reason 3. Infrastructure destruction and post-war reconstruction. Perhaps one of the most overlooked costs of war is the damage left behind. World War II was especially brutal in this regard. Entire cities were leveled by strategic bombing campaigns. From Dresden to Tokyo, London to Stalingrad, infrastructure, homes, factories, and cultural landmarks were obliterated. The cost of rebuilding was enormous. After the war, Europe lay in ruins. Roads, bridges, railways, power grids, and water systems had to be reconstructed almost from scratch. The Marshall Plan, an American initiative to aid Western Europe's recovery, cost over $13 billion in the late 1940s, equivalent to over $150 billion today. And that was just for Western Europe. Eastern Europe and large swaths of Asia had no such assistance and faced decades of economic struggle. Rebuilding wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It involved re-establishing functioning economies, political systems, and social structures. These hidden, long-term financial burdens continued long after the fighting stopped, adding another layer to the war's overall expense. Reason 4. Economic disruption and national debts. Beyond physical destruction, World War II led to massive disruptions of global trade and national economies. Shipping lanes were blocked, colonies were cut off from their mother countries, and many currencies collapsed under the strain of hyperinflation and wartime spending. To fund their war efforts, nations borrowed heavily. The United Kingdom, for example, emerged from the war with debts exceeding 200% of its GDP. The U.S. national debt also skyrocketed, although post-war economic growth helped mitigate this over time. Global trade networks were shattered. Entire industries collapsed or were restructured under state control. Inflation ran rampant in many countries. Nations resorted to printing money, selling war bonds, and instituting severe austerity measures. The long-term economic effects of this war continued to ripple for decades. Some debts were not fully paid off until the 21st century. Reason 5. Human cost and long-term economic impact. Finally, and perhaps most tragically, comes the human cost, which translates directly and indirectly into economic consequences. Over 70 million people lost their lives in World War II. Soldiers, civilians, victims of genocide, famine, and disease. Every life lost is a loss of potential. Workers, inventors, leaders, teachers, parents. The war left millions wounded, displaced, or permanently disabled. Entire generations were affected, and productivity across the globe suffered. Refugee crises emerged on an unprecedented scale. Many of those who survived were unable to return to normal life. In some countries, the majority of able-bodied men between 18 and 40 were killed or maimed. The psychological scars, while difficult to quantify, also had deep economic impacts. Societies traumatized by war often take decades to recover socially and economically. Birth rates dropped, education was disrupted, and political instability created further economic stagnation in many parts of the world. World War II was not just a war of bullets and bombs. It was a war of industry, of economies stretched to their limits, of entire nations mortgaging their futures for a shot at survival. It redefined what it meant to go to war, not just in terms of military strategy, but in the raw cost that conflict demands. When we talk about war today, when we discuss its risks, its implications, we must remember that the true price of war is never measured only in soldiers lost or battles won. It's measured in lives destroyed, economies shattered, and generations burdened by the debt and trauma of violence.